If this isn't for you, we could be done with it. Don't worry about it. But then once he opened that perspective, it made me want to dive in more.
Tommy Thompson. Tommy, he's been a soccer star for as long as I can remember. I mean, just as a kid, you probably excelled, right?
One of the reasons that we have this podcast is to talk about what makes you great. Like being self-aware and then talking about your path, the vision that you have for greatness.
I could skip all that. I want to go raise my level and play at Indiana. So I took that decision and then ran with it. You're not going to be the tallest guy on the field. You're not going to be the strongest. So you got to figure this piece out.
We've got a whole hour here. Right? We don't want to skip through things.
Pluses and minuses. Like, what were you grappling with?
That was a big decision. And that's why I wasn't sure about it. It's like, should I go down the Generation Adidas avenue? Because generally, those guys got paid more. But older than me. You know, 10, 15
Barely.
years older than you.
Whoa.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of Flip Your Friday. I'm your host, Wynn Silberman. This is my co-host, Casey LeBlanc. Casey, we have a very special guest today in Tommy Thompson. Tommy, thank you very much for coming here and hanging out on a Saturday, even though it's Flip Your Friday. We like to do thing any day. So
we are recording. This is our first recording on a Saturday, and both of us know Tommy, so luckily after this, we're going to be able to go out and enjoy the mid-70s weather in San Diego, so thank you for flying down from San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I've missed San Diego. It's been a couple years since I've been here, so it feels good to be back.
It's funny, in San Diego, you start to, people in the wintertime, you get random family and friends that you've never talked to in months start to reach out, and like you look at your phone, you're like, I haven't heard from them. They're like, what are you doing today? Wrong number.
I can imagine.
But just real quick, for some of the audience that doesn't necessarily follow Tommy Thompson. Tommy, he's been a soccer star for as long as I can remember. I mean, just as a kid, you probably excelled, right? And then you went to the University of Indiana on a Big Ten scholarship. And I think freshman of the year at Indiana or Big Ten freshman of the year?
Yeah, Big Ten freshman of the year.
So right. Market success early on in your career. And then he actually had an interesting decision, which I'd like to actually address first, which you decided to leave school that year and go on to a pro career that's continued with the San Jose Earthquakes for what, 10, 14 years?
It was 11 seasons, yeah.
11 seasons. And so this is kind of one of the first things that I want to talk about, because I think it's politically relevant. I think it's socially relevant to talk a little bit about the concept of education and sports. I know that when I was growing up, you know, you hear about the kid leaving early to pros, and it was always the parents or kind of a collective wisdom, so to speak, that says, oh, he's going to play a couple years and then he's not going to be able to have any social skills. He's not going to have any educational skills. It's a bad decision to leave school early. Jeez. You know? Well, I think that's the way it was, at least when I was growing up.
Yeah, I hear you.
But can you go a little walk me through your decision-making process and incorporate your concern, or did your parents have concern for education, or was that even a thing to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had two older brothers, actually, that kind of guided me on this process. Because before, the big decision wasn't necessarily just leaving Indiana. It was actually leaving high school early to start. So, because I graduated high school a year early to go to Indiana to play with Tanner, the brother that's a year older than me.
So you were 17?
17, yeah. Stepping on a college campus. So but to me, it was like, okay, I'm one of the best players in the Sacramento area. I got to raise my level. Like, because being the oldest player in the area, you're not going to improve. So my brother guided, the one that I went to Indiana with, guided me on that decision. He's like, hey, you should get here now, because he graduated half a year early, so he went in the spring.
Wow,
so that's actually a lot more common now. But back when you did it, you're probably one of the first.
Yeah, but I give full credit to my older brother. Okay. He was like, you should get here as early as possible. Don't waste your time playing soccer in Sacramento.
Did you already have the offer? Did you already know where you were going, or how did that look?
Yeah, the recruitment process was it started young. Mm-hmm. It started young, so I was already committed to Indiana my sophomore year. Okay, and so once Tanner went, but then that, you know, as it's easy to look back now and say, oh, no big deal. But at the time, as a 17-year-old kid, skipping your senior year of high school was a big deal.
And going from Cali to the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pretty big difference in weather. We're talking about weather today,
and lifestyle, and like, it's a
culture.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the first decision I had to make, where it was like, okay, I'm pursuing soccer. I don't care about my high school experience your senior year. I don't need to do the senior ball. I could skip all that. I want to go raise my level and play at Indiana. So I took that decision and then ran with it. Then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm starting at Indiana, winning Big Ten freshman of the year. And then now I was faced with another decision, which is like, okay, should I go pro after 4 months of playing soccer?
Okay, we've got a whole hour here. Right? We don't want to skip through things. One of the things in this podcast that's really interesting to the people that listen is what the discipline looks like to excel. So talk a little bit about what at 16 and 17 years old, what was your routine that was significantly different than anyone around you, and how did you maintain that level of discipline when, for the most part, people in high school are out doing a lot of other things, right? There's a lot of things that you can get distracted
and/or other sports.
Yeah.
or other sport. Yeah, correct. So what was that like at that young of an age?
So my dad played in the Olympics. He played soccer in the Olympics in 1984. Cool. And so he provided a pathway. And he always told me, he said, look, I don't want to push you too hard, but there is a pathway that you can take, and I'm going to help you become professional. And so he kind of guided me on that. But
how old were you when that happened? Sorry.
Like 11 years old.
11, okay.
When we had our first moment of friction, where it's like, I don't know how much I like soccer. He sat me down. He's like, if this isn't for you, we could be done with it. Don't worry about it. But then once he opened that perspective, it made me want to dive in more. And so he I don't know, he like Jedi mind tricked all of us.
Well, was it manipulative or was it great parenting or was it both?
I think it's all
he just finished his 11th year in pro. I'm pretty sure it's elite parenting.
Because my two older brothers went pro as well.
Okay.
So he
is he still having kids? Because I mean, he can sell that sperm on the open market here.
Yeah. He's
an idea like that. EliteSperm.com.
I know.
He's really smart. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So he had a great program for us, and he did a great job of creating. It was almost like a soccer incubator, right? So I was the youngest brother, which always gives you an advantage.
You get to see your other brothers, what they do right, what they do wrong.
Yeah, but also more important than that was actually that I was able to train with their teams. So I had my own team in my age group.
You always could train up.
Yes, exactly. So I would train with my team, and then I'd train with Tanner's team, who's a year older, and then I'd train with Ty's team, who's 2 years older. So I was
basically sisters?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
Now, what level of professional is she on?
She actually did take it as serious. She ended up playing in high school, but
that was it. Okay.
Yeah. She told her dad. She told her dad no.
I was just gonna say, does your dad talk to her? Does your dad
sat her down and she said, "I'm good."
Does your dad still talk to her?
Yeah.
Good.
I think she's actually his favorite.
Of course.
But yeah. So but basically, I was uniquely positioned as the youngest brother. So I was on 3 teams. So your question, what did you do that was different than the rest? I was basically training with 3 teams like week after week. So I would go to my practice, and then immediately after I'd drive over to wherever my brothers were at, go to their practice, and the next day train with my team and then train with my other brother's team. So I was doing 3 hours multiple times a week.
That's just running.
That's it's not uncommon for parents to, because they know I have a background in sports, they'll call me their kids potentially. Well, every parent I feel like believes that their kid's the one, right? So there's a little bit of balance there. There's a little nuance, but it is asked often with soccer. It's like, look, my kid's doing really well. They're in AYSO. What do we do? How do we get them to the next level? And it sounds like, because this audience might want to hear about this, sounds like your recommendation would be, for example, play up.
Yeah. That should always be the case.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no matter if it's business or if it's strength training, you have to level yourself up and go and being the 6th grader playing in the
challenge,
on the 8th grade team. And
that's a very good point.
Yeah. Because you're going to be exposed to things that you wouldn't necessarily be in your age group. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it wasn't even just playing with my brother's team. That was a huge opportunity for me. But then even before practice, we'd show up and we'd do 2v2s, whereas me and my dad versus my 2 older brothers.
Yeah.
And then in that like intimate environment, I'm constantly getting reps against older players. Like my 2 older brothers were like the 2 best players on the older teams. Now it's just me and my dad versus those 2 guys, and they're showing me how to actually play the game. And in those little moments, like week after week, it adds up. And then once I started turning like 16, after doing that since I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
Once I started turning like 15, 16. Instead of losing those games 5-0, now all of a sudden it's like, okay, wait, I could get you on this
compete.
move. I could do this.
Right.
And then
you learn your body.
Change. Yeah, exactly.
Who is the best brother? Who is the most talented?
I think it's probably me, but purely, in my opinion, because of the situation I was in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
because I was just the youngest brother, and so I just got the reps. And my dad also was able to coach me through throughout my whole childhood, whereas my other brothers had to jump on different teams at times. So I was uniquely positioned.
So in high school, often, and I'm not sure how soccer works, but usually in high school sports, you can be better if you're a little bit more physically talented. If you're a little bit more disciplined, you can just excel at a really high level. And then as you level up, the gap gets tighter.
Right.
When you look back on both high school, college, and professional, what are some of the things that you were able to do at each level that were able to keep you a level above the rest?
Yeah, so I think, I'm 5'7". I was never the biggest player. I was never the strongest player. I was never the fastest player. But it was all in like my footwork and the skills. And that's something my dad just hammered into us ever since we were 6 or 7 years old, is that look, like you're not going to be the tallest guy on the field, you're not going to be the strongest, so you got to figure this piece out. And so that's something that we did, and that's why I love soccer. You know, the best player in the world, Lionel Messi, is 5'7" as well. It's not something like basketball.
Casey, maybe you should have played soccer and stuff.
I was elite soccer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I was like 6.
Because soccer's not a sport where you could just get born into it. Where, you know, if you're 7 feet tall, you might have a chance playing in the NBA, even if you if you didn't pick up a basketball until you're 15 years old.
But you know what's funny? So my parents wouldn't let me play football growing up, so it was all soccer because they said you need your footwork to play any sport.
That's true.
And in soccer, if you focus on that, they also probably knew I'd be vertically challenged. And
That's what I like that.
And so they said, well, sir, you're going to need good footwork if you're going to be athletic, and this is how you're going to learn.
That's
because
interesting.
They were never worried about the toughness. They were more worried about like the skill set. Right. And I think this actually translates when you say something like that, right? Like, we knew I wasn't going to be 6 foot, the biggest, the strongest, and we've heard that on this podcast from so many professionals. And what they did do is they focused on something that they were really good at and then made it excellent. Right. So they just said, I'm going to take this skill, one or two specific things, and then excel at that.
Yeah.
And that applies to work. It applies to your health. I mean, just
everything.
There's a lot to that, where it's you just have self-awareness and then you go all in a particular skill.
I want to switch gears a little bit, but still obviously continue on topic. You know, NIL, it's a completely different world than certainly when you and I went to school, and certainly when you were there. You talk about always wanting to compete and always wanting to level up, right? But in your perspective, in soccer in particular, I mean, if all of a sudden you're offered $1 million or a significant sum to stay one more year in Indiana, would that have affected your decision-making process to continue to go pro or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because to me, it was already difficult to leave IU for me, because it was I did jump my last year of high school, and then was at Indiana, and then next
you're skipping human experience.
Yeah, exactly. Next thing you know, I'm giving up my sophomore, junior, and senior year at IU.
Were you having fun?
Oh, so you left after your freshman year?
Yeah, I left after 4 months. It was one season, and I left in January.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
did you have any romance? Were you sad to leave a girlfriend?
Yeah, I had a girlfriend. Got a girlfriend in that 4 months.
That's rough.
See you later.
No, brutal. It was brutal because I go to IU as a 17-year-old, and now I'm like, okay,
now you're in love.
But now I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going to build my base. You know, this is
17 years old love. Let's just take it easy, buddy.
Let's not talk about love on this one.
Okay, this is where I'm like, this is where I'm building my new home here. You know, it's like, okay, I gave up my senior year. Now I'm excited to kind of live this college experience that everyone talks about, have this amazing time, whatever else. And the next you know, the earthquakes come calling.
So how does that work? Do you know, hey, I'm a draftable player?
Yeah.
How does soccer work with the draft?
Like you get word that, like, through agents, through your head coach. Okay. Like if you are playing well, like I was having a good season, and once you get an award like that, Big Ten Freshman of the Year, after graduating high school a year early, that sends a message to different clubs, and so you could either go homegrown, which is what I ended up doing.
What does that mean?
It means you're within the umbrella of like where you grew up is close enough to the MLS team where they could claim your rights, and so there was actually conversations about. Me going homegrown or me going what's called Generation Adidas, which is basically Adidas signs the top 15 young players in college soccer. Because since I grew up in Sacramento, it wasn't certain that I was eligible for the homegrown program.
Are you close enough? Is that
what was the advantage?
So
what's the balance? So Adidas versus homegrown. What's the pluses and minuses? Like, what were you grappling with?
That was a big decision, and that's what I wasn't sure about. Is like, should I go down the Generation Adidas avenue? Because generally,
what does that do? How's that benefit?
Generally, those guys got paid more. The contracts were better because the homegrown players we're siloed into only one team, so there's less competition.
And a prophet's never loved in his own town.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, we ended up working the deal out to where the homegrown contract ended up being comparable to what I would have gotten GA in the GA Generation Adidas program. So it worked out, but it was difficult, and I didn't want to leave IU at that time because I had just got my feet under me. So to answer your question, if there was $1 million deal where I could get paid to play at Indiana and like continue pursuing my
it would have affected your decision making process.
Big time.
I'm curious on what NIL dollars look like in college soccer today. What do you have any sense of that, or talk to anybody like what are the best players getting in soccer paid in like a big time soccer school?
From what I've heard, it's in the $15,000 to $20,000 range.
A year.
It's nothing crazy. Yeah. So
just for context, we're talking a quarterback at Alabama is probably making $3 million.
Yeah.
A year.
Backup might be making $1 million.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. No. There's a lot of backups making 7 figures.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. So let's just circle back. You were one of the best college soccer players. And would you have stayed for $20,000?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't
so
think
give
so.
us an idea, if you can disclose, what was your signing bonus, or what were the economics in today's dollars in comparison? Like, you're making 6 figures in your first contract, or is it you'll get the 20? And then you have to prove it, or what's the contractual?
Yeah, it's all public anyway. The MLS contracts are all public, so I could speak transparently on it. So basically, it was a really interesting decision, and I talked to my dad a lot about it. Thankfully, he was #1 draft pick way back in the day, so he knew the route. He knew like how to deal with the agents. He knew how to have the conversations. And so basically, what we decided was that if I was going to leave, it was going to be a short-term deal. Because it was like, okay, I need to find out quickly, can I meet this level or not?
Yeah.
But then it was like, it's going to be a short-term deal, so low commitment on the club's end, but it's going to be more money then.
Right, because then you can just shop your services around more, or do they still have your rights forever? How does that work?
It was basically, it depends on the contract. It's
Yeah.
a little bit complicated. Depends on if there's like team options, whatever else.
Yeah.
But basically, I had just a 2-year guaranteed deal outright.
Okay.
So I was 18 years old, signed it. By 20, I could be cut.
And if you were cut, can you go back to Indiana?
I could go back, but I couldn't
not
play.
at the time.
Oh, you couldn't play.
Yeah,
not,
I
at
wouldn't
the,
be
not at the
eligible.
time
Would you
because
have gotten
you couldn't
your
be
scholarship
played.
back?
No.
But
Okay,
now,
so that's
now
what I was
maybe you
scared.
could. Because at the
Maybe, yeah.
time, NCAA, once you're paid as a professional athlete, you lose your eligibility. But that might have changed
I don't.
now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't
how
know.
that
It's an
works
interesting question, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to figure that out.
Interesting. Okay.
Quick question on rights, though, just on contract language. I'm always curious about this. You know, you talked to me earlier about that kid that the Earthquakes signed at 15, and now he's a global superstar, right?
Playing in Guadalajara.
But you said you used a term, and it almost sounded like slavery in a way, because you said the Earthquakes sold him to this team for $4 million. How does this work? What do you explain that for the audience, because it's unique language.
Yeah. The world of soccer is complicated, and I feel like especially for the American viewer, if you're not exposed to like the global markets, it's really confusing.
Right.
Because in the NBA, the NFL, it's more straightforward with what's going on. But basically, the business model is that teams sign young players. Like the kid that got sold for $4 million to play in Guadalajara, he signed at 15.
He was your teammate?
Yeah, my teammate. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually gonna go watch him play, and I think it's next week, March 5th. He's got a big game. I can't wait to see.
It's gonna be like what, 60,000? I mean,
Yeah, 60,000
That's
people,
awesome.
yeah.
And how old is he now? He's 16, 17.
He's like 21.
Oh, 20. Oh, okay. Wow.
But he's now actually like
now he's a
legit,
superstar.
Yeah, which is it's amazing to see his growth, because he joined us in preseason when he was 15 years old.
Crazy.
But that's basically the business model: is these clubs take a chance on these kids, but then they sign. I had a little bit of a unique deal where I was 2 years guaranteed, but they sign them to long-term deals with team options. So they'll sign them to maybe $70,000 early on, and then a lot of these kids won't pan out.
I mean, that's one of the first things you ever learn as an agent, particularly in baseball. Like, the concept of a team option is absolutely zero chance. Player option, maybe. Because, look, the team option is this. If you play well, they're going to give you the option. Well, if you play well, probably you should have shopped your services to the highest bidder, you know?
But so many people don't know that, especially when you're 15.
Oh,
and
no,
and you have a family who's never, had $70,000 put in front of you.
100%. And it's a different each sport is a different culture. That's kind of the norm, I think, in soccer.
I'm curious on that, too. We want to talk about it being in such a global game, in America playing second fiddle in this particular sport. What
Yeah.
What is your experience internationally with soccer, and how different is it here locally well, not locally in San Diego, but in the domestic US? And particularly like when you played in the MLS, what is like regionally, what is soccer viewed
different?
as? Like, so we know obviously football and you know, and worldwide is massive. But what is the difference for those of us that have never experienced maybe an international game? And then what is it also here domestically and regionally? Like what's like the appetite for
like Seattle's
soccer?
Always rocking versus San Jose is sometimes rocking, for example, right? Like who would you say are the best regionally to play?
So I'd say Seattle's got a great fan base. Portland's got a great fan base. Atlanta's got a great fan base.
And what do you mean by, like, give us a sense of attendance? Like, what does that mean for you?
So, like, when I remember playing a game in Atlanta, I think it was 2019, they had over 50,000 people there.
Wow.
Seattle consistently gets 35 to 45,000 people. Portland they sell out their stadium at, I think, around 20,000.
What would it take for the U.S. for it to catch fire? Now it gets more popular, obviously, with the Olympics, and we all kind of get together. It's like one team, and we're all. Right. But if you were the you know, if you were managing the league, how would you increase popularity so it starts to become, you know, maybe bigger TV contracts, more maybe widely accepted as a major sport, right? You get baseball, basketball, and football as the major sports, and soccer has always been kind of the up-and-comer that It gets a little bit of traction, and then it kind of falls back, gets a little bit more during Olympic time, and then kind of falls back. What would you do if you were running kind of the league to try to get some of the European vibe?
Yeah, I think it'd be bringing in the global superstars.
Okay.
And I think we've already seen the growth
Starting
of the
to
league
see that in
under
Miami,
Lionel
right?
Messi.
Yeah.
Like him being brought in, I've never gotten so many texts being like, oh, when are you guys playing Inter Miami? And the amount of people that have asked me, oh, have you played against Messi? It's countless.
Yeah.
And so I think bringing in those globally recognized
name recognition.
superstars, yeah, absolutely, that are doing at a high level in the best leagues in the world, which is in Spain, La Liga, or in the English Premiership in England, you know, or in France, or in Italy.
Do you have a sense, not to interrupt you, but do you have a true sense of a distinct difference in quality between EPL and MLS, for example? Yeah. What is it? Explain it to me.
It's there. I think I mean, so we played, like, I played against Manchester United. I played against Atletico Madrid. So but granted, they were in preseason. But I've had games against the top teams in the world, and I would say these guys are just so well rounded. It's incredible. So like
there's no weakness.
Yeah, you look at some athletes in MLS. It's okay. That guy's really fast.
Yeah.
Or that guy's big. That guy's strong. He can muscle you off the ball. But then maybe his feet aren't sharp. You know what I'm saying? But these guys, all of them are just athletes.
Machines.
They're fat. Yeah, exactly. But then they all grew up with the soccer ball like I did.
Yeah.
Whereas like my thing was footwork, skill, all that. And then that's where I differentiate myself in MLS. These guys in the EPL, they're built like NFL players, but then they have the feet to back it up too.
Does the MLS or any soccer leagues, are you guys watching film? Is there film watch, and then is there like strategic game plans for every time you're going out there? What does the prep look like for a match?
Yeah, it's 3 days a week watching film.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, after the game, we'll watch how the game went, watch ourselves, and then you prep for the other team going into the weekend.
Okay. And there's different strategy per team based on their strength, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you note their strengths and weaknesses. You know, maybe they send numbers forward so they could get counterattacked, or maybe they pack it in. You got to make sure you move the ball, be patient, whatever it may be. There's a lot of different playing styles in Major League Soccer.
Interesting.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just so different.
Yeah,
you know, like because soccer is just something like you play as a kid, and then it's just
not in the moral fabric of United States sports, whereas globally soccer is embedded in the moral fabric of every culture. You know, I think that's the difference.
And it's striking for me. Like I was just in Greece watching a former coach like run his team over there, and then I was in Argentina as well to get in touch with the Argentinian game, and their passion for it is striking.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm in a bizarro world where like I'm in Athens and I'm out, you know, in the city grabbing food at a restaurant, but their interest level in like talking about Ike or talking about Panathinaikos or talking about Olympiacos, like they all have a team and they all rep their team and they're all proud to be a part of the team.
Yeah.
But whereas in the US, like that pride for soccer just is non-existent.
It's not there.
But like if you ask anyone like, oh, do you like in the Bay Area, do you like the Niners? It's like, yeah. But over there, it's weird for me to even see it up front in person. And that was what I actually really enjoyed about my travels in Europe, is to actually be like, oh, this is like the game that I grew up loving that no one really knew about. This is actually out here, and people love it and they understand it.
Would you go to, now you are a free agent now, you played 11 years in San Jose, now being a free agent, can you just go to Europe? Like, how does it work as a free agent in soccer?
You're a global free agent, right?
You're free globally, so you could sign anywhere with any team.
Yeah. So there's a number of different agents that reach out, and like different agents have different specialties in different markets.
Okay.
But markets open and close at different times. So a lot of the markets right now are closed, but they open up in the summer. So if you want to go play in Sweden or Finland, you want to get in touch with an agent over there that has good contacts, and you could potentially find.
I can go over there if you want me to.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is a Swedish agent right
here. So you're 29 now. 29. In soccer years, is that's older?
About 56.
Is it really? Like, because it isn't.
No, but so each league's different.
Okay.
So each league's different. Like Major League Soccer, initially 29. Like when I joined the league, 29 was actually a good age to be in because it was a veteran dominant league. I'd say the average age in the Quakes locker room was around 27 to 29.
Okay.
Whereas now the league, like through the homegrown mechanism, has changed completely, where we're signing kids at 14, 15 years old. So the average age in the MLS locker room has gone down.
Which is mirroring the European way of doing things, right?
Yeah. But you have to, because we're getting stomped in almost every international league, right? Because if we were going to compete, why are our women's soccer teams better than our men's in comparison to the international, like, and only the main stage is what I know. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
But when we look at how they compete in the Olympics versus how the men compete in the Olympics, what is it? Just because the men in Europe are just so much more skilled, advanced? Is it like what is it?
In my opinion, I think the United States has done a really good job of supporting the women's game, and so they've been ahead of the curve.
And I liken it to our guest. I mean, I think Brandi Chastain's winning goal set the stage for women's soccer that era. I mean, it changed the entire dynamic of women's soccer in that year, which was 1994.
Yeah, but they were good, right? Yeah. Like they were still good with
her.
her.
That's a good point.
And has the U.S. ever won?
No,
they've never won. What's the best they've ever done?
I think it's quarterfinals.
Yeah,
quarterfinals, and that was within the last 10 years. Or maybe last 20. I feel like it during our lifetime.
Yeah. They haven't made any serious.
Look at us. Look at us. We don't know.
Yeah. But I think that's interesting. So you as a country, we have to get younger. We have to make it more popular so younger kids that have talent are going to play it and then stay with it. But if you're a young kid and you've got this footwork and this ability, there's not enough money to, I mean, like if you're getting $3 million at Alabama and you're getting 20,000 as the two best athletes in the best programs, that's such a difference in dollars. The dollars usually drive behavior.
Right.
Yeah, they do.
Right? Like
in every facet.
Everything. Yeah. So it's like, I'm wondering, I'm just curious now, this is just kind of throwing it out there, but like, what is a really good golfer in college? I guess if
that would be interesting.
I guess they just go pro.
Let's invite one on and ask.
I'm just curious on like how soccer compares.
I can get that info.
If you're not in the main three, but even baseball. I think baseball
is unique.
I think baseball and soccer, the dollars are probably the same.
Well, they're very similar, but for different reasons. For different reasons. I think baseball, the reason is they still have a clamp on the way the collective bargaining agreement is run and the way it's run forever.
I'm talking about college baseball. College baseball dollars.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, not contracts.
I thought you meant a contract.
I'm just curious, like how the dollars.
Yeah, I don't know.
I just think it's basketball and football for big dollars in college, but I don't know.
I'd be willing to wager a bet on that. I'd agree with you.
It's probably because of eyeballs.
Yeah,
I think mostly it's marketing, eyeballs, and interest.
I think so too. Casey and I often talk about how back to a little bit to education, how sports for me and sports for him really provided a unique education and opportunity to excel off the field. And I want you to reflect, and would you mind reflecting on a little bit of how maybe your experience, you didn't have the college experience, right? But your experience through the pros has given you opportunities to have marketable skills in the business world. Is there anything like that you could kind of share with us that would make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even me being here today, I think is a great example of relationships that have been built over time. I mean, I met you when I was maybe 19 years old. We went to the Justin Bieber concert.
Holding hands?
You didn't have to mention the I'm not clear if it was Justin Bieber, but go ahead. Diddy was not involved, I'll tell you that much.
And Post Malone was opening.
Yeah, Post Malone was opening.
He was doing White Iverson. Like, that's how long we've known each other. He, like,
but I think Bieber forgot the lyrics.
We skipped Post Malone because no one even knew who
we
he
skipped.
was.
Who wants to do this Post Malone dude?
But like, I mean, then I met you a couple years after that. Right. So I think just getting exposed to people that were, not to age you guys or anything, but older than me, 10, 15
Barely.
years older.
Whoa.
but it's healthy, because I think like what you do in real estate, what you do in sports business, I'm getting exposed to these different industries and the individuals that are actually in them. And I'm talking to them like man to man, just catching up. Like, what do you like doing? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What's going on? Whereas in this actual like academic infrastructure, you're
insulated from reality.
Desk, like you're talking to a professor, but now all of a sudden when you're talking to someone in the industry, it feels foreign. Yeah. Whereas I was my whole career now, I've constantly been exposed to people in all these different spaces. So I'm able to walk in to whatever it may be, whether it's this podcast or a real estate office, or if it's an agent's office, whatever else, I'm willing to take it on just because I'm comfortable in different settings. And I think that's something that you don't get in that actual academic infrastructure.
Okay, so I have a follow-up to that, which I think is fascinating. And I don't know when, and I'd like to know, you taught yourself Spanish, and going to that, why did you end up teaching yourself Spanish, and then what impact did that have, or what were you trying to do by learning a different language yourself, really, right? You were kind of self-taught and ended up doing what with it? What was the original thought with it? Did it have anything to do with your career in the marketability of what you were doing professionally? Just give us some context on, one is how did you do it? Why did you do it? And
Casey would really like to know, because he still hasn't learned Spanish and it's been 6 years. Hace 6 años que...
Ha sido mucho tiempo.
Ay, Dios mío. Que lástima el hombre.
See, I knew what you guys were fucking talking about.
You brought it up. I mean, go ahead. It's a great question.
No, it's a good question. So basically, in 2018 with the Quakes, we were bottom of the table. And so it was one of those crossroads, like similar to me leaving high school early, similar to me leaving Indiana early. It was like, okay, now I'm 22 years old. We were last in the league. I got 1 year left on my contract. What's going to happen? Like, am I actually going to make it to a 10-year pro, which was my goal? That was my dream, was making it that long. Like, what's going on? New coach comes in. He's an Argentinian guy, speaks no English, brings in a full-time translator. And so all of a sudden I'm like, wow. If I want to survive, I got to adapt. Wow. And so immediately, I remember we got we got breakfast right when I came back from Cancun. So we had a trip to Cancun in preseason, and I had an emotional connection with the way he was approaching basically the rebuild. And I fell in love with the energy. And so on this trip, we were there for 2 weeks. On this trip, I downloaded Duolingo. And then I was on it for 2 to 3 hours a day, every single day. So it was 2 weeks, came back from that Cancun preseason trip, speaking it. I remember we went and grabbed breakfast, and I was texting you in Spanish, and then I see you in person, and I start talking to you, and you're like, wait, you actually...
Yeah, I thought you were Google translating, and then this asshole's actually speaking it to me.
Wait, hold on. You did that in 2 weeks? I had a translator for 2 years. I have a focus problem, all right? Fuck off.
Yeah. So it was I wanted to be a part of this rebuild.
I love that.
At the time, I wasn't playing, but it was more like, okay, this coach is coming in here.
Find a way.
He's trying to do something special.
Yeah.
And then we ended up going from 4 wins to 13 wins that season, and it actually ended up being the best season of my career so far.
Wow.
So, but it wasn't like, okay, I need to learn Spanish so I could get minutes and play. It was like, this feels like
it was deeper than that.
Well, you're also like, hey, if I can learn Spanish, I could be more part of the culture.
Exactly, and I can learn, because this was at the time he was voted best coach in North America for what he did in Guadalajara, and then he came to us, who was the last place team. So I'm like, this is a natural born leader. Played in 2 World Cups for Argentina. Like, I got to speak to this guy, not through a translator. Like, what a waste. would it be to have this guy as my head coach? I don't have a one-on-one relationship with him.
That's incredible.
What a great way to be inspired to learn a marketable skill. I would say being bilingual is pretty fucking marketable just in the world.
Well, and I have a question for the audience. So it was Duolingo for 2 weeks? Yeah, Duolingo for 2 hours a day to 3 hours a day. Okay, all right, everybody get that?
Yeah, just 2 weeks and you'll be bilingual. But
shameless plug.
Yeah, but to be fair, it was a great environment to learn because we had double days and there's a full-time translator there, so I'm constantly hearing things in 2 languages.
That's the best way to learn.
Yeah, and then I'm also I got friends on the team that are bilingual, so I'm studying for 2-3 hours.
Then you're talking.
And then I'm using it. I go to lunch and then now I'm using the phrases that I learned. I'm like checking my math, seeing like, okay, is this right? Did I conjugate this correctly? So I had a lot of tutors along the way.
That's great.
Which helped a lot, and then that's what expedited my process.
Amazing. And there's so many lessons with that, right? Like I think people see something like the challenge of having a coach with a translator and they just take it for surface level. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Instead of what can I do to maximize my experience and get the most out of somebody who has a track record of coaching and is coachable, and I'm coachable and I want to learn, I want to get better. I just think that so many people miss that point of
well, in business for sure. Like, I mean, someone gets a new boss. So anything, any new life's experience.
I think people just immediately go, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to get it.
Yeah.
And all my team that's bilingual is going to get it. Instead of just like 2-3 hours a day, that's a real commitment.
Yeah.
And that was when we had double days too. So it was in between.
You're also tired.
It was 2 practices a day, morning, waking up 6 a.m., going to practice at 8 a.m.
That's awesome.
And then it was in the afternoon training as well. But in between, it was like, I got to learn this language.
What is your daily discipline or life look like training when you're outside of the confines of a club now? Meaning, at least when we were, playing sports, there's a schedule from the time you wake up, probably before you want to wake up, until the time you go to bed, which is probably past when you're actually tired. And so when you are on your own, to some degree, what does the discipline look like now? Because now you're, as a free agent, do you have an agent who's like with a strength coach who's saying, hey, here's the discipline, here's what it looks like, or do you have to do all that on your own?
For me, like similar to how I learned Spanish, it's always been just me. And it like my dad provided me with that roadmap.
Yeah, you have a unique perspective in an Olympic father.
Yeah. So my dad basically taught me how to be self-taught. Yeah. Because he grew up in Minnesota. He was actually a running back. So he was like benching 350 in high school. He had some D1 offers to the Big Ten, but he chose soccer over it because he didn't think he had the longevity because of his knees in football. And he was also
That's usually true. No, longevity-wise.
He was also maybe too short to be a legit football player.
Wow, so 5'9", nothing to sneeze at.
I've said nothing.
But he basically taught himself soccer, and so I think that approach has always kind of came to me as well, whether it's like weightlifting or whether it's training with the ball. I've never wanted a coach. I've never wanted a trainer. Like to me, the clock, if I'm trying to get in shape, the clock is my trainer. And it's like
you consistently would win, by the way. I always remember during practice, like what's the drill that you guys,
the beep test.
It's a horrific, what is the beep test? It's a horrific test.
It's brutal, but I would win that every time.
Well, what is it for those of us that don't know what that is?
So it's basically run until you can't anymore. So basically the whole team of 30 professional athletes line up on a line, and then there's a beep. And so you have to make it to the beep. It starts off really slow until it beeps. So you jog, it beeps, and then you jog back over here and it beeps. And then slowly it starts speeding up. And so it's maybe you're running for 20, 30 minutes, but like you got to stay on the pace. And then if you don't hit that beep,
competing with like the best of the best and not wanting to lose against something simple like that.
It's like horrific. The first thing you do in preseason.
I do that every day.
Of course you do. I know you beep.
We all do the beep test every day, Wynn. You're over there fucking taking naps on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock.
By the way, naps are very important for success. Okay, go ahead.
If you live in Japan, you're right. Yes, that's actually true. It's part of the daily culture, yes.
Oh, man.
But so I would win that beep test. I think I won it 4 years in a row.
But as an older guy, you're expected the younger kid's going to usually win, and you consistently would just continue to win.
It's just the mentality, and I think that came from me. It's like I don't want a trainer to tell me like good job if I don't run 2 miles in 11 minutes and 10 seconds.
You know what great looks like.
Yeah, I don't need someone patting me on the back. It's like, okay, if I don't hit these numbers, that means I'm out of shape and I got to run more. So that's my approach. I'm not saying it's the best way to go about it, but that's how I learned Spanish was on my own. It's how I learned how to play piano, guitar. All of it's all been on my own, and that's, I don't know, for me that's what works. But everyone's got different situations.
Yeah, no, I love that. Would you say that is your biggest differentiator? Is the discipline? Like, is discipline something that your father talked about? Is that something that was specific in his strategy on coaching and teaching you, or was that just something? Was it a byproduct of your genes? Was it something that, like, how did you learn or become aware that level of dedication will yield results? I think for a lot of people, they don't equate it to that, right? Like, because I always tell people, it's like, don't send me a picture of one day at the gym.
Right.
Send me,
exactly.
Like, I don't give a shit.
Right.
I think that's weak, and it actually makes you look fucking terrible, right? Like, send it to me when you've done 90 days in a row and you've got an 8-pack, or you've done some sort of milestone. Give me a result. Right. I don't give a shit about you doing one day. But
I think that's a great way to put it, because I think like the intentionality of it is critical, and I think my dad. I mean, I might have been, like what we were talking about earlier, I might have been 9, 10, 11 years old, whatever it was. He told me, he's like, I'd rather have you out on that field for 20 minutes
going hard
with intentional work than being out there for 2 hours. Don't be one of these guys that's like showing up, putting on your cleats, talking to your friends, and then you go home and then you tell yourself that you had
a good day.
A good day. It's like, be serious about it.
Be deliberate.
Take that 30 minutes and do something with it. And that's what got me here. Like, whether I'm running, these guys have these workout programs with these trainers, it's just me and I'm on a track. It's like, okay, I'm running
and like you said, the clock is your litmus. What else do you need? Did you run 2 miles in 11:10 or not?
Yeah, but you could go into these gyms, you could go with the trainers and you're stretching and you're doing, and which is all great, you know? But it's like, to me, it's not like I had any crazy off-season program. You know what I mean? But it's like me versus the clock. Okay, let's go. And then, guys are posting different Instagram stories with how I'm like, okay, like, we'll see. Once we line up for that beep test, we'll see who was running and who wasn't. And then, so I think that concept of like being intentional with your time, and if you're going to work hard, it's better to give it your all for a shorter period of time than just dragging things out over longer periods of time.
I'll mince words a bit, but I think it's Elon Musk who talks about deadlines, and if you give somebody 6 weeks, it'll take them 6 weeks. If you give the same problem to somebody and you give them 6 hours, they'll solve it in 6 hours.
Exactly.
Like there is an intention. If you're intentional about something and you have that level of thought around it, you can achieve a lot more than you give yourself credit for. Now, I think there's something to be said as far as what that self-discipline looks like with some people, right? I think it's being aware. If you don't have that, then you need to surround yourself with it or go find it in someone.
Absolutely.
Because it's not for everyone. There's a lot of people that don't have.
There's different personality types too. You don't have to necessarily.
I know, sir. I was trying.
That's
so
why I'm
glad
here with you now. Actually, I'm sorry. It's true. I am with Casey LeBlanc because I need more discipline, and I just want to thank you for that.
Okay. Well, good. Well, you're clearly not around me enough. but it is, and I'm not to say one way is better or worse. It's just being self-aware. What gets you up out of bed at 5 a.m. in the morning versus 8 o'clock or whatever. But I think it's results. To me, it's just result oriented. Like, you can get to the finish line at the same exact time and do it different ways, right? So I'm just curious. I think that one of the reasons that we have this podcast is to talk about what makes you great, like being self-aware, and then talking about your path, the vision that you have for greatness. And those are the things I think people get a lot from, because they could be like, oh, that resonates with me, or that just doesn't hit for me.
Right. Yeah, and you talk about path. We talked a little bit about this on our way here. I want to get a little bit into free agency. Let's get into the now and the present.
Sure.
Because I think you had an incredible perspective, and we had a really cool conversation about this kind of context of, number one, being out of a box, so to speak, and kind of walking your own path, kind of finding your own joy. And you equated that with your road to free agency right now. And I'd like you to speak a little bit about your perspective this time around on free agency? Because I feel like it's a little different than in years past.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because now, at 29, I've had the opportunity to see the world. And honestly, a lot of it actually came from me learning Spanish. And so the coach that I was talking about that came from Argentina, he's now coaching in Greece. And so in the past off seasons, actually before I ran into you in Barcelona, I was in Athens visiting that coach and seeing how things were like out there. And then that's where I fell in love with the passion these other countries have, where all of the fans know exactly what's going on. I'm like hanging out with the ultras and they're talking to me about, the same things that the coaches are talking about, which is, to me, incredible. Like, incredibly intellectual fan bases, incredible passion for the game. And that's opened my eyes to like, wow. So I've been playing in the first division in the United States, but I've never really felt the game in this way. And so now my interests have shifted. If an opportunity comes up in Major League Soccer, it's definitely something I would consider. But even just having an experience, whether it's in South America or it's in Europe, it's something I really want to do before I decide to hang up the boots, because I want to be immersed in
passion,
in the global game, in the world's way. Because the game here in America is different.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, Seattle's
got to be
immersed
in the global game in the world's way. That's a really cool. No, it's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really
true.
cool.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to put it. So, if all things being equal, money, playing time, two opportunities, two letters are sitting in front of you, you're going to take a international opportunity to go see and experience the sport in a different way.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's my priority. Is I want, because I've basically been money focused for the past 11 years. Yeah. And I am happy with how things have shaken out. I'm happy with the contracts that I've gotten. And so now that I'm 29 and I still got some juice left, I want to use this juice for new experiences.
You're redefining value of the deal, which is important.
Yeah,
let me ask you a question, because I think I'm curious. As you've gotten older, and now I get a chance to call you old, and you are old in MLS terms, soccer terms,
exactly,
right?
Yep.
But I believe that there's strength in that, and it has a lot to do with the mind. And so, in your next opportunity, how do you then say, all right, I've got to maintain a certain level of physical acuteness or ability and footwear, all the things that got me here, but how can I use my mind? So how do you think about that in the professional, any profession really, but really now taking it like, all right, I'm maybe not as fast, maybe not as quick, or even if I'm the same, if I'm going to continue to evolve or get better in my sport, I need to be smarter. I need to think differently.
Yeah.
How do you think about the mind part of being a professional athlete?
Yeah, I think it's similar to that phase where learning another language, Spanish, was a way for me to provide value. I think as you become the veteran in the locker room, you have a new perspective.
And responsibility.
Exactly. So that is, you have to find new ways to provide value. And so that's like in the management of people's emotions. Like, so, the season is a roller coaster. And if you got guys that haven't been there, one moment they're on top of the world because we won a game. Right. Then the next moment they're in the dumps because we lost 3 games in a row.
And you were that guy 10 years ago.
Exactly, yeah. But then you go through you ride the roller coaster a couple times, and then this is the high and this is the low, but that it's going to come back up. And then when you're up, it's going to come back down.
Which makes you more marketable from the standpoint of being able to be a mentor to a lot of the team that, again, if you could be the same thing, if you're at that experience level and someone at 23, if the same talent exists, taking someone who's a little bit more experienced, because they're going to be able to have a bigger impact on the locker room. The
locker room and life. I think that what you just mentioned, understanding and appreciating the roller coaster of not only the game but life, that manifests confidence. And when you have confidence, you're going to find joy.
Yeah.
Let
me ask you a question, because I love this. I'm super passionate about this topic. And what are some of the things you think about in leadership? Leadership from great coaches that have had an impact on you, and then as you do transition into this next phase of your career, how you want to impact others and how you think about your role in the locker room on the team with regards to leadership.
Yeah, I think leadership starts with human connection, and I think that's what Almeida did with our group, and that's what inspired me to learn Spanish. It's not like he asked people to learn Spanish. That was never in the conversation at all. Yeah. But the way that he communicated passion, where he's like, I know you guys were last place in the league, but I believe this group can get it done. I don't want to bring in all these new players. I think you guys can do it. And the way he went about these conversations, like he would sit us down before these practices in Cancun, and he'd just sit on a soccer ball, put his hat on backwards, and talk to us for 30, 45 minutes.
What are some of those conversations? I love that, by the way, because it's just relatable, right?
Exactly. So he's telling stories about his career.
Okay.
He's talking about how he thinks that he didn't necessarily enjoy the game the way it ought to be enjoyed.
Wow.
He's talking to us about how, like, look around. You know, we're in Cancun at this beautiful resort.
So perspective.
So he's constantly providing his perspective because he's a guy that rode the biggest roller coaster of them all, which is playing for Inter Milan in Italy, top league in the world, top team in the world.
Yeah.
Playing for Argentina in the World Cup, one of the best footballing countries in the nation or in the world, you know. And so he rode like the big one.
Yeah.
And so
he rode a big wave.
Yeah, that's in that, like, what those individuals deal with in those situations is something that you can't even wrap your head around until you step into some of these.
You have
arenas.
A country on your shoulders.
Yeah, and it's serious. Like, people die over these games.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like real passion. And so he rode the roller coaster, and he just did such a good job. Instead of coming in and barking orders, which he did as well, he started with human connection, and he became relatable, which is what
it's a common theme. Common theme with Bill.
But you start like if you come in just barking, you could lose the locker room quickly.
Yeah, connection first.
Yeah, because people do, especially disciplined people, they don't mind. If you've earned the respect, hey, you coach me. I want to get better.
Exactly.
But if you come in and
just bark,
and you're ruling with the iron fist
Yeah.
without any human connection, or you have sometimes it doesn't always go as you'd hope.
Yeah, especially with high level people.
Exactly.
Because they have their own swagger about them because they
right.
know that they've achieved this, that, and the other thing.
There's a lot of egos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Big ego in those situations. But if you come in and you become a person the right way, but it's tricky because you also, as a leader, you don't want to show any weakness. And so as a connector if you're a connector and you're trying to make a connection with somebody, it is a challenge because as a leader, you don't want to step too far down to where you're trying to be everyone's friend.
Right.
And so I think the best leaders find that perfect in between where it's understood that you're the leader and you're going to take us somewhere, but you're not my friend.
Right.
You're my boss.
There's a line.
But it's a
tough line.
But the best ones know how to walk that line perfectly.
That's such a good point. Let me ask you. We touched on this a bit, and I know we're getting close to the end, but ego as it relates to professional athletes, and maybe just talk from your own personal experience or things or personalities that you've seen in a locker room in a professional environment. What are some of the good, the bad, the ugly that you've seen that works, maybe that doesn't work, but how people that want to be elite can balance ego? Because there's a lot of different variations, right? It's like some of the people that do well balance the line as far as their confidence and not getting too far up or down. But how do you?
But you have to believe you're the best.
Yeah, you have to believe you're the best and walk the walk.
Yeah.
And sometimes that could come across to different people in different ways. But how do you see that, or how do you think about that?
Yeah. It's an interesting one. That's a great question. I don't think I've ever actually been asked that because it's a hard line to walk. Similar to the leadership line of trying to be a leader, but then trying to connect with people, but not trying to be someone's friend, whatever else. It's a fine line to walk because you got to have the swagger about yourself where you walk on this field and you're with some of the best athletes in the country and you're about to compete against them. You got to think that you are that guy. Otherwise, you're going to get stomped on.
Right.
So you need to have an ego, but then you also, to me, it's like the difference, I guess, to answer the question, the way I go about it is I'm a different person as soon as I step in between the white lines. And so I'm going to hype myself up before games. I am that guy when I step on the field and I'm competing, and I literally change personalities. Like and guys that I've played with see it, where it's like he's a nice guy in the locker room, whatever else, but then we're doing a small-sided game where it's 7v7, and it's like it's not funny anymore. Right. It's like, this is serious. This is my job. I take this serious. Like, get back on defense. I'm getting in arguments, whatever else. You flip that switch.
Yeah.
And so I have the confidence from my background and the amount of time I spend in the league to know what should be happening and what shouldn't. And And so when I step in between those lines, it's dead serious. That's my job. Winning is and maybe I win, maybe I lose, but I have this energy about me where it's serious. But then once I step out of those lines, you have to manage the ego in the correct way, because maybe you're playing, maybe you're not playing. Maybe you're going to get cut. Maybe you're going to be getting a new contract next season, but you need to see things clearly. As soon as you go back to your locker and you're sitting down and you're just a person again, you're not that guy that had to compete. You got to see things clearly, and I think that's something that people really struggle to manage, because there's a big picture out there.
Yeah.
And like coaches have their interests, players have their own interests, but if you let that person that, I don't want to call it like a monster that you become when you're competing in that way, if you are consistently that person in between the lines and then in the locker room, that's the quickest way to be a cancer and get bounced out.
Yeah.
So you've got to manage that.
That's awesome.
I got a couple things. First of all, I think we should wrap this up because it's a beautiful day and I want to have some fun outside too. But there's two things I want to talk about. One is Casey's mom, actually. She actually contributes to the San Diego Zoo, and I had never thought of going to a zoo since I was 6 years old. But she inspired me to go, and I've had a great time there. It's an amazing place, and I wanted to know if you wouldn't mind signing a ball. And Casey, let's try, if you guys can put that up maybe later and see if we can auction it off to raise some money for the San Diego Zoo.
Yeah,
I think it'd be really fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Tomorrow, so
I just think your mom sometimes she's an amazing lady. Yeah,
she volunteers at the zoo, awesome. And so yeah,
I think it'd be really cool if you could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be awesome. The other thing I'd like to try is, he says he's a free agent. He's saying he's still got a little bit. If we could go mess around the simulator a little bit, maybe have him kick a couple balls and see if his skill set's still there, I'd still kind of like to see that too. So that's what I'd like to kind of end it.
So we'll wrap it up here, and then we'll do a short video cut.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Perfect. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. Cool. Well, that's
listen,
a wrap. Thank you very much. That was
absolutely
super insightful. I think sometimes I think people don't know if they can relate to professional athletes, but that was super relatable in so many other aspects than just sports. It was just like life and like certain things of like discipline. I don't know. A lot of things just really resonated with me. I thought it was just incredible. I learned a lot, so I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back here with you guys.
That's awesome.
San Diego, baby.
All right. All right. That's a wrap.